¿Qué tranza? ¿Qué tranza, perros? ¿Cómo están? Solo ver si estamos en vivo. Un segundo, por favor. Un segundo. Ahí está. ¿Qué tal, jovenazos, jovenazas? ¿Qué tal, muchachos y muchachas y muchaches? Porque aquí somos inclusivos. Aquí mandamos a chingar a su madre a todos parejo. No discriminamos. Se crean. Pero bueno, vamos a darle. Es hora de leer. No me acuerdo dónde me quedé. Voy a empezar en la página 55. Espero que ahora sí se vea. Porque me di cuenta la última vez que llevan como 3 videos que no he cambiado de página. Están como en la página 28 o algo así. Pero espero que se vea que estamos en la página 55. Pero bueno. Two young fellows in the cart were just getting whips ready to help Mikolka. With the cry of now, the mare tugged with all her might, but far from galloping, could scarcely move forward. She struggled with her legs, gasping and shrinking from the blows of the 3 whips, which were showered upon her like hail. The laughter in the cart and in the crowd was redoubled, but Mikolka flew into a rage and furiously thrashed the mare. Let me set a timer real quick. $30. The laughter in the cart and in the crowd was redoubled, but Mikolka flew into a rage and furiously thrashed the mare, as though he supposed she really could gallop. "Let me get in too, mates," shouted a young man in the crowd, whose appetite was aroused. "Get in, all get in," cried Mikolka. "She will draw you all. I'll beat her to death." And he thrashed at the mare, beside himself with fury. "Father, father," he cried. "Father, what are they doing? Father, they're beating the poor horse." Come along," said his father. "They are drunken and foolish. They are in fun. Come away, don't look." And he tried to draw him away, but he tore himself away from his hand, and beside himself with horror, ran to the horse. The poor beast was in a bad way. She was gasping, standing still, then tugging again and almost falling. "Beat her to death," cried Mikolka. "It's come to that. It'll do for her." "What are you about? Are you a Christian, you devil?" shouted an old man in the crowd. "Did anyone ever see the like? A wretched up nag like that pulling such a cartload," said another. "You'll kill her," shouted the third. "Don't meddle. It's my property. I'll do what I choose. Get in, more of you. Get in, all of you, and we'll have her go at a gallop." All at once broke into a roar and covered everything. The mare, roused by the shower of blows, began feebly. I want to know what that means. Feebly. A way that lacks strength or force.
Feebly.
Cool. Feebly kicking. Even the odd man could not help him smile, but not even the old man could not help smiling to think of a wretched little beast like that was trying to kick. Two lads in the crowd snatched up whips and ran into the mare to beat her about the ribs. One ran each side, hit her in the face, in the eyes, cried Mikolka. Give us a song, mates, shouted someone in the cart, and everyone in the cart joined in a riotous song, jingling a tambourine and whistling. The woman went on cracking nuts and laughing. Give me 1 second, bro. It's loud as fuck out there. Any moment now. I'll wait. Cool. I think I'm clear. I don't know if you guys can hear, but that distracted me. Everyone in the cart joined in a riotous song, jingling a tambourine and whistling. The woman went on cracking nuts and laughing. He ran beside the mare, ran in front of her, saw her being whipped across the eyes, right in the eyes. He was crying. He felt choking. His tears were streaming. One of the men gave him a cut with the whip across the face. He did not feel it. Wringing his hands and screaming, he rushed up to the gray-headed old man with the gray beard, who was shaking his head in disapproval. One woman seized him by the hand and would have taken him away, but he tore himself from her and ran back to the mare. She was almost at the last gasp, but began kicking once more. I'll teach you to kick, Mikolka shouted ferociously. He threw down the whip, bent forward, and picked up from the bottom of the cart a long, thick shaft. He took hold of one end and with both hands and with an effort brandished. I don't know what that means. Brandished.
Brandish.
Wave or flourish something, especially a weapon, threat of. Okay. Brandished it all over the mare. He'll crush her, was shouted round him. He'll kill her. It's my property, shouted Mikolka and brought the shaft down with a swinging blow. There was a sound of a heavy thud. Thrasher, Thrasher! Why have you stopped? Shouted voices in the crowd. And Mikolka swung the shaft a second time, and it fell a second time on the spine of the luckless mare. She sank back on her haunches. I think. Oh fuck! No. Okay. I think I know what it is, but then again, maybe I don't. Okay, but
Haunch.
on her haunches, but lurched forward and tugged forward with all her force. Tugged first on one side and then on the other, trying to move the cart. But the 6 whips were attacking her in all directions, and the shaft was raised again and fell upon her a third time, then fourth, with heavy measured blows. Mikolka was in a fury that he could not kill her at one blow. She's a tough one, was shouted in the crowd. She'll fall in a minute, mates. There will soon be an end of her, said an admiring spectator in the crowd. Fetch an axe to her. Finish her off, shouted a third, I'll show you. Stand off. Mikolka screamed frantically. He threw down the shaft, stooped down in the cart, and picked up an iron crowbar. Look out! He shouted, and with all his might he dealt a stunning blow at the poor mare. The blow fell. The mare staggered, sank back, tried to pull, but the bar fell. But the bar fell again with a swinging blow on her back, and she fell on the ground like a log. Finish her off, shouted Mikolka, and he leapt beside himself out of the cart. Several young men, also flushed with drink, seized anything they could come across, whips, sticks, poles, and ran to the dying mare. Mikolka stood on one side and began dealing random blows with a crowbar. The mare stretched out her head, drew a long breath, and died. Damn, bro, these sons of bitches. Damn. You butchered her, someone shouted in the crowd. Why wouldn't she gallop then? My property, shouted Mikolka, with bloodshot eyes, brandishing the bar in his hands. He stood as though regretting that he had nothing more to beat. No mistake about it. You are not a Christian. Many voices were shouting in the crowd, but the poor boy, beside himself, made his way screaming through the crowd to the sorrel nag, but his arms around her bleeding dead head, and kissed it, kissed the eyes and kissed the lips. And then he jumped up and flew in a frenzy with his little fist out at Mikolka. At that instant, his father, who had been running after him, snatched him up and carried him out of the crowd. Come along, come, let us go home. He said to him, Father, why did they kill the poor horse? He sobbed, but his voice broke, and the words came in shrieks from his panting chest. They're drunk. They're brutal. It's not our business, said the father. He put his arms around his father, but he felt choked. He tried to draw breath, to cry out, and woke up. He waked up, gasping for breath, his hair soaked with perspiration, and stood up in terror. Thank God, it was only a dream, he said, sitting down under a tree and drawing deep breaths. But what is it? Is it some fever coming on? Such a hideous dream. He felt utterly broken. Darkness and confusion were in his soul. He rested his elbows on his knees and leaned his head on his hands. Good God, he cried. Can it be? Can it be? That I shall really take an axe? That I shall strike her on the head, split her skull open? That I shall tread in the sticky, warm blood? Break the lock, steal and tremble, hide, all splattered in blood with the axe? Good God, can it be? He was shaking like a leaf as he said this. But why am I going on like this? He continued, sitting up again, as it were in profound amazement. I knew that I could never bring up myself to it. So what have I been torturing myself till now? Yesterday when I went to make that experiment, yesterday I realized completely that I could never bear to do it. Why am I going over it again? Then why am I hesitating? As I came down the stairs yesterday, I said myself that it was base, loathsome, vile. The very thought of it made me sick and filled with horror. No, I couldn't do it. Granted, granted that there's no flaw in all that reasoning, that all that I have concluded this last month is clear as day, true as arithmetic. My God. Anyway, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Why? Why then am I still? He rose to his feet, looked round, and looked round in wonder, as though surprised at finding himself in the place. He went towards the bridge. He was pale. His eyes glowed. He was exhausted in every limb. But he seemed suddenly to breathe more easily. He felt he had cast off that fearful burden that had so long been weighing upon him. And all at once there was a sense of relief and peace in his soul. Lord, he prayed, show me the path. I renounce that. I don't know what it says. Cursed. It looks weird there. But my son says, I renounce that cursed dream of mine. Crossing the bridge, he gazed quietly and calmly at the Neva, at the glowing red sun setting in the glowing sky. In spite of his weakness, he was not conscious of fatigue. It was as though an abscess that had been forming for a month past in his heart, suddenly broken. Freedom, freedom. He was free from that spell, that sorcery, that obsession. Later on, when he recalled that time, and all that happened to him during those days, minute by minute, point by point, he was superstitiously impressed by one circumstance, which, though in itself is not very exceptional, always seemed to him afterwards the predestined turning point of his faith. He could never understand and explain to himself why. When he was tired and worn out, when it would have been more convenient for him to go home by the shortest and the most direct way, he had returned by the Haymarket, where he had no need to go. It was obviously and quite unnecessarily out of his way, though not much so. It is true that it happened to him dozens of times to return home without noticing what streets he passed through. But why? He was always asking himself, why had such an important, such a decisive, and at the time, such an absolutely chance meeting happen in the Haymarket, where he had moreover no reason to go, at the very hour, the very minute of his life when he was just in the very mood and in the very circumstances in which that meeting was able to exert the gravest and most decisive influence on his whole destiny. As though it had been lying in wait for him on purpose. It was about 9 o'clock when he crossed the Haymarket. At the tables in the bar, at the booths and the shops, all the market people were closing their establishments or clearing away and packing up their wares, and like their customers were going home. Rag pickers and costermongers Food sounds good, especially fruits and vegetables. Ah, cool. Of all kinds were crowding around the taverns in the dirty and stinking courtyards of the Haymarket. Raskolnikov particularly liked this place and the neighboring alleys. When he wandered aimlessly in the streets, here his rags did not attract contemptuous attention, and one could walk about in any attire without scandalizing people. At the corner of an alley, a huckster and his wife had two tables set up with tapes, thread, cotton handkerchiefs, etc. They too had got up to go home, but were lingering in conversation with a friend who had just come up to them. This friend was Lizaveta Ivanova, or as everyone called her, Lisaveta, the younger sister of the old pawnbroker, Alyona Ivanova, whom Raskolnikov had visited the previous day to pawn his watch and make his experiment. He already knew all about Lizaveta, and she knew him a little too. She was a single woman, about 35, tall, clumsy, timid, submissive, and almost idiotic. She was a complete slave and went in fear and trembling of her sister, who made her work all day and night, and even beat her. She was standing with a bundle before her huckster and his wife, listening earnestly and doubtfully. They were talking about something with special warmth. The moment Raskolnikov caught sight of her, he was overcome by a strange sensation, as it were, of intense astonishment. Though there were nothing astonishing about this meeting, you could make up your mind for yourself, Lisaveta Ivanova. The huckster was saying out loud, "Come round tomorrow, about 7. They will be here too." "Tomorrow?" said Lisaveta slowly and thoughtfully, as though unable to make up her mind. "Upon my word, what a fright you are in of Alyona Ivanova," gabbled the huckster's wife, a lively little woman. "I look at you. You are like some little babe. And she's not your own sister either. Nothing but a stepsister. And what a hand she keeps over you." But this time, don't say a word to Alyona Ivanova, her husband interrupted. "That's my advice, but come round to us without asking. It'll be worth your while. Later on, your sister herself may have a notion. Am I to come?" "About 7 o'clock tomorrow. And they will be here. You will be able to decide for yourself. And we'll have a cup of tea," added his wife. "All right, I'll come," said Lisaveta, still pondering, and she began slowly moving away. Raskolnikov had just passed and heard no more. He passed softly, unnoticed, trying not to miss a word. His first amazement was followed by a thrill of horror, like a shiver running down his spine. He had suddenly, quite unexpectedly learned that the next day at 7 o'clock, Lisaveta, the old woman's sister and only companion, would be away from home, and therefore at 7 o'clock precisely, the old woman would be left alone. He was only a few steps from his lodging. He went in like a man condemned to death. He thought of nothing and was incapable of thinking, but he felt suddenly in his whole being that he had no more freedom of thought, no will, and that everything was suddenly and irrevocably decided. Certainly, he had to wait. Certainly, if he had to wait whole years for a suitable opportunity, he could not reckon on a more certain step towards the success of the plan than that which had just presented itself. In any case, it would have been difficult to find out beforehand with certainty, with greater exactness and less risk, and without dangerous inquiries and investigations. That next day, at a certain time, an old woman of whose life an attempt was contemplated would be at home and entirely alone. Bueno, llevan 5 capítulos y yo les prometí un resumen porque sé que al chile al principio no se me entiende ni madres, pero por eso resumen. Bueno, en el primer capítulo nos presentan a Raskolnikov, que es un joven estudiante en Petersburg. Él se encuentra en una situación donde está muy desesperado. Él vive en la pobreza, aislado de todos los demás, con pensamientos oscuros dando vueltas en su cabeza. Él está planeando asesinar a Aliona Ivanova, una usurera a la que considera una parásita que se aprovecha de la gente necesitada. Mientras él camina por la ciudad, reflexiona sobre su teoría que algunas personas tienen derecho a cometer crímenes si con ello benefician a la humanidad. Él se siente superior a los demás, pero al mismo tiempo está lleno de dudas y tormento interno. En el capítulo 2, para distraerse un poco, Raskolnikov entra en una taberna y se cruza con Marmeladov, un funcionario borracho que empieza a contarle su vida sin filtro. Le habla de su esposa, Katerina Ivanova, una mujer enferma que lucha por mantener a sus hijos, y de su hija Sonia, quien para salvar a la familia del hombre se ha visto obligada a prostituirse. Marmeladov, entre lágrimas y alcohol, se lamenta por su miseria y falta de voluntad para cambiar. Raskolnikov, aunque fastidiado, siente cierta compasión por ellos y decide acompañarlo hasta su casa, donde ve de primera mano la miseria que viven. En el capítulo 3, de vuelta a su pequeño cuarto, Raskolnikov recibe una carta de su madre, Pulcheria Alexandrova. En ella le cuenta sobre su hermana Dunia. Ha conseguido un trabajo como institutriz, pero su jefe la acosó y luego trató de culparla para salvar su propio pellejo. Al final, Dunia dejó el empleo y ahora está comprometida con un hombre llamado Lucín, un tipo con dinero, pero con la pinta de oportunista. La madre de Raskolnikov está feliz porque el matrimonio podría ayudar a la familia económicamente y permitir que su hijo continúe con sus estudios, o sea, Raskolnikov. Pero Raskolnikov no lo ve así, está convencido de que Dunia se está sacrificando para mantenerlo, y esto lo llena de rabia y culpa. Siente que el mundo está podrido, que el dinero lo maneja todo y que la única forma de cambiar su destino es actuar. En el capítulo 4, Raskolnikov sigue dando vueltas a la carta, sale a la calle, perdido con sus pensamientos, y se encuentra con su viejo amigo Razumiljin, un tipo simpático y leal que le ofrece ayudarlo a encontrar trabajo, pero Raskolnikov lo rechaza. Está demasiado metido en su propia cabeza. Después, mientras deambula por la ciudad, ve a su madre y a su hermana llegar a la ciudad de Petersburg. Pero en lugar de acercarse a saludarlas, las observa desde lejos y sigue su camino. No quiere enfrentarse a ellas todavía. Su mente sigue atrapada en su gran plan. En el capítulo 5, que es lo que acabamos de leer, esa noche Raskolnikov tiene un sueño muy perturbador. Es un niño y ve a unos hombres borrachos golpeando brutalmente un caballo hasta matarlo. La escena es tan cruel que se despierta sudando y con una sensación de angustia profunda. Se pregunta si su plan es realmente correcto o si solo es un monstruo en potencia. Pero el destino parece darle una señal. Más tarde en la calle escucha a Elisabetta, la hermana de Aliona Ivanova, decir que al día siguiente su hermana estará sola en casa. Es la oportunidad perfecta. En ese momento Raskolnikov siente que todo se alinea para que él cometa el crimen. Y su destino está sellado. Y para resumir el resumen, en estos primeros capítulos nos muestra la mente atormentada de Raskolnikov y cómo poco a poco se convence de matar a la usurera. No, y cómo poco a poco se convence de que matar a la usurera es la única solución para cambiar su vida. Es un descenso psicológico brutal con toques de desesperación, culpa y arrogancia. Pero bueno, creo que ya andamos al tiro. Voy a seguir. Chapter 6. Later on, Raskolnikov happened to find out why the huckster and his wife had invited Elizaveta. It was a very ordinary matter, and there was nothing exceptional about it. A family who had come to the town and had been reduced to poverty were selling their household goods and clothes. All women's things. As the things would have fetched little in the market, they were looking for a dealer. This was Elizabeth's business. She undertook such jobs and was frequently employed, as she was a very honest and always fixed a fair price and stuck to it. She spoke as a rule little. And as we have said already, she was very submissive and timid. I was going to continue, but that's my 30 minutes. But at least you guys know what the fuck has been going on. Hopefully. If you speak Spanish. If not, lo siento. Lo siento por ti, compita, si no sabes español. Pero bueno.